Wait and watch for more news from the Clinton camp, if there is any. In the meantime, a fatal shooting in Chicago renewing focus on the city's escalating gun violence. Two brothers are now charged with murder after a mother of four was gunned down on a sidewalk while pushing her baby in a stroller. 32-year-old Nikita Aldridge is NBA star Dwayne Wade's cousin. She died late Friday of multiple gunshot wounds. On Sunday, police arrested two suspects who they say were targeting someone else when they shot Aldridge. Both are convicted felons.
Her life was cut short by gunfire from two convicted felons who were both out on parole, one of whom was on his daily break from an electronic monitoring bracelet. This reprehensible act of violence is an example of why we need to change the way we treat habitual offenders in the city of Chicago. When will enough be enough? This tragedy isn't just noteworthy because Ms. Aldridge has a famous family member. It's noteworthy because these two offenders are the prime example of the challenge we face here in Chicago with repeat gun offenders that don't care who they shoot, don't care whose life they take, and clearly don't fear the consequences of their actions.
Sheriff Gilmore is a former prosecutor and criminal defense attorney. Bob Bianchi is a criminal defense attorney, former head county prosecutor and trial attorney. Just want to add to this. So this shooting happened on Friday. Since Friday, according to the local ABC station in Chicago, 9 people were killed in Chicago. 50 others were shot. And so the question that we're posing today is, what do we do about this? It's the question for candidates, but we're curious your perspective having worked in the legal system. Bob, what do you think of what was just said there? County prosecutor and trial attorney. Just want to add to this. So this shooting happened on Friday. Since Friday, according to the local ABC station in Chicago, 9 people were killed in Chicago. 50 others were shot. Shot. And so the question that we're posing today is, what do we do about this? It's the question for candidates, but we're curious your perspective having worked in the legal system. Bob, what do you think of what was just said there?
You know, Jenna, I was in charge of gangs, drugs as the head county prosecutor, and there are intelligence-led policing mechanisms that we can follow to limit this kind of activity. And it starts with police, who seem to do a very good job. Note they've identified 1,400 violent criminal gang offenders who use drugs. These two individuals, I believe, got out of prison way too early. They were placed on parole, electronic monitoring, and here's to me what the biggest problem is. With intelligence-led policing, with the ability that we have, they actually took one of them off the monitoring to go quote-unquote look for a job. That was a mistake. The second thing that we need to do is geospatially map these individuals so that if you're on electronic monitoring and you're within close proximity to somebody else who's been identified as one of those 1,400 people, because birds of a feather flock together, parole can immediately alert law enforcement, and they should interdict. And if they did in this particular case, and I'm not suggesting law enforcement did it wrong, but it's better vision, better policies, using technology. They may have caught these guys with guns, and that would have been a ticket right back to prison.
All I think about is dollar signs, though, John, how much that's going to cost, how much manpower in some of these struggling police departments that are already overextended.
But then again, how much of a value do we put on innocent loss of lives? I mean, here's the problem. We do have a revolving door policy in prisons, and then it's a joke. The fact that one of these criminals was out to look for a job, not on his electronic monitoring, so he could go get a job. He's a 26-year-old career felon. What kind of job is he going to get? Letting him off his electronic monitoring to look for a job is a joke.
Well, tell us about that. How does that happen? Because obviously there had to be some legal maneuvering to have him
It's
off
bad
of that.
administration, and in fact, one of those
Totally
guys,
bad administration.
one of them actually had been convicted before for violating his electronic monitoring in another instance.
And for gun charges.
And I respectfully disagree.
So who's at fault? Because that's the question.
Listen,
Who's at fault for that?
Here's at fault, the people at fault, in my opinion, from what I've dealt with, and we were talking about this offset, is that there are people that have the ability to understand aggressive, effective law enforcement, balancing civil rights, protecting our police officers, but also ferreting out police misconduct. But when we get into a room and the people that know what they're talking about come up with answers, by the time it goes back out as a policy, it gets ripped apart by the politicians. These people that are living in these communities, these good, decent people whose kids are going to school, these people who want to live a good life are being ravaged by a small number of people. And my last point on this is, it doesn't cost more money. These technologies actually save money.
But also, Jenna, you cannot, if somebody's in prison for a 6-year sentence on a gun charge, let them stay in prison for 6 years on the gun charge. Don't let them out with good time credits in half of that amount of time. If that had happened here, we'd have one less life that wasn't lost. I mean, we have to keep the violent criminals behind bars, and the non-violent criminals shouldn't be behind bars. They can be rehabilitated.
How do we fix this?
You know, you talk about resources.
How do you
fix it? And that was a very good point. We are warehousing people in prison with these mandatory sentencing laws that are non-violent offenders who are really mentally ill or addicted, and we should be taking those resources out towards rehabilitation, not putting them in the prison system. And me as a prosecutor, and I think most prosecutors and police in this country would all say that we need to take these violent offenders, these people that represent what these two individuals represent, and put all our resources into them. So this is the way you fix it. You don't put good people that made a mistake and just hit a fly with a sledgehammer. These guys are the flies that should have been hit with a sledgehammer, and they weren't. They were allowed to go back on the street and commit another heinous crime.
Jonna, what do you think?
Well, it also begs the question, why are we raising career criminals in this country when everybody should have the same resources to not do that? To have a 22-year-old and a 26-year-old with 6 or 7 felony convictions is not acceptable. This is America. We need to do more to prevent that from happening, and then we can hopefully end the cycle 100 years from now.
Well, and that's really the next question. That brings us into another territory, the timeline on all of this, including the resources. Bob and John, great to have your thoughts. Thank you so much. John?
A Fox exclusive on U.S. relations with Turkey going forward. Why the recommendations in a new report could turn heads at the State Department, the Pentagon, and the White House.
Start the interview with a firm handshake. I know!